Are sellers finally giving up here in Prescott, Arizona? Are they not getting their price, and instead of lowering the price, they're pulling the houses off market? Well, let's dive into the stats and I'll tell you what's going on and what the latest numbers from October are saying. All right, so let's go over a couple key points here before we dive into it completely. Home sales were down from last month, a similar point to last year. New listings are also similar to last month and also last year. Inventory is down for the fourth month in a row. Still were more houses on the market than last year. So supply is down for the fourth month in a row as well, and is saying we're back to a balanced market. Put a pin in that because we'll revisit that conversation here in a minute. Sales prices remain steady 3 months in a row, and they're slightly up from last year. Discounts are a little less than last month, but at the same percentage that they were a year ago. And days on market is the same as September for October, but we're up 3 weeks over last year. So let's dive into the stats one by one. All right, so the first one we are looking at is the number of homes sold. So last month in October, we had 143 homes sold in the MLS. This is 7 more than we were a year ago, but you can see we are significantly down from September. But September was an anomaly. I mean, look at what was going on here in 2024. We had a dip from August to September and then back up in October, about the same as August. 23, slight dip in September and then leveled off for October. 22 was pretty level, August, September, October. And remember, that was the year that we had the interest rate spike. Interest rates hit over 7% by the end of 2022, and the rest of the years are kind of anomalies. So we had the most sales in October of the last 4 years. So even though we were down to 143, you can see the trend lines there. That's good. That means we had a productive October. Looking into the future, we are trending downward. So look at this graph just in general. Every year has been down from October to November. That's when we start to see the seasonal shift in our market for home sales. And if you're not familiar with Prescott, we do see a seasonal slowdown in November, December, January, and it starts to heat back up in February and March. So you can see by the spaghetti graph here on your screen. Prediction. I think we're going to be like the 22 and the 2024 markets for this year. So we are going to be down from October to November, but how much down is going to kind of be up in the air. I think we're going to be probably somewhere between these two. So 114 to 120. We'll have to see what happens. Moving on, let's talk about new listings or homes just listed that hit the market. Last month, we were at 179 new homes that hit the market, which is 5 more that got listed this year compared to last year. So even though, like I alluded to, we're seeing sellers pull their homes off the market, we're still seeing new sellers hit the market. And we're pretty close to 2024 numbers. Look at that right there. If we highlight 25 and 24 together, we can see that we are pretty much on trend for last year. And if we add in 2019, September was higher, but October was right there with us. So between 2019, 24, and 25, we're all kind of right there. 2025 is the highest that we've seen for homes going on the market since 2020. So I think that's interesting, slightly over 2019 numbers. And trending forward, so let's keep 2019 and 2024 highlighted here. They both kind of fell off a cliff in November, but you can see overall, let's bring all of them back in here. All the numbers for November have been lower than the year prior. So homes on the market, and that goes back to our seasonal slowdown here in Prescott, which is pretty common. So, and it'll get even less for December. And then everybody who was waiting for the new year gets off the couch, gets their house listed that first week of January, and that's why we see a spike of inventory in January. Let's make a quick prediction. I think we are going to be closer to 2024 numbers because we've kind of been, slightly different. We were slightly higher in July, slightly lower in August, pretty much on point in September and October with 2024. And that number was 135. So let's say plus or minus 5 from 135 for next month for how many houses are going to hit the market in Prescott. So what is that doing to our inventory? So what I like to look at is just listed versus sold, and that gives me a month-to-month flow of what we're doing on inventory, if we have a surplus, a shortage, or if we're balanced kind of somewhere in the middle. for the sake of this graph, I do a surplus is anything over 50, a shortage is anything under -50, and then anything in that 100 house gap is more or less balanced. So looking back in September, we were at -1. So really good sign, actually. That's a very healthy market. The closer we get to zero, the healthier the market is. 36 in October, meaning that we had 36 more houses hit the market than what actually got sold. So we're not quite over that 50 mark, but trending upward. It'll be interesting to see what happens in November. Essentially, I put it here equals. So we're still in kind of more or less a balanced part, but we're drifting higher, which is interesting. The last time we saw it go up from September to October was 2020. All the rest of the years trended down from September to October. This is where the data starts to get a little interesting and starts to shift a bit. And I'll get into that more why, but this is just pin this in your brain now. This is kind of one of those things that's happening as we see the market kind of shifting. Yeah, I'm not going to give too much away. Stay here with me and I'll unpack that more in a couple minutes. So let's get on to the next slide. What is this doing to our inventory? Well, you would think a surplus of 36 homes would add 36 homes to the inventory since 36 went unaccounted for, unclaimed. Nope, that's not what happened. So we went from 726 in September to 710 in October. So there's 16 there. And then we had 36 on the last slide. Well, so it's 16 plus 36 is 42 plus 10, which is 52. So this is telling me we had 52, plus or minus, somewhere around there, 52 disgruntled sellers, which if you're not selling your house and you're pulling it off the market, are you really a seller or are you a dreamer? So, and nothing wrong with being a dreamer, but we had 52 people, homes, maybe more people than that, because if there's more than one person per household. But anyways, yeah, 52 homes that came off of the market in October. So 52 sellers whose listings either expired and they didn't relist it, or they got frustrated because they're not getting their marketed price or their advertised sales price or what they think the house is worth. So they just said, forget it, we'll pull it off market. Maybe we'll try next year, maybe we'll rent it. Everybody's story's different. So, but that is the key turning point there. And that's where I'm at with the whole, our sellers giving up for the theme of this video. And this data here makes me think that sellers are starting to give up. Let's talk about predictions real quick moving forward. Trends down always, look at this, year over year over year. It always trends down from October to November for inventory. And that's because as we get into the winter season, we do typically see sellers pull their homes off the market November, December, and then relist them in January. And that's why we get the bump there. Prediction, what do I think is going to happen? I think it's going to go down from October to November, but I still think we're going to be higher than the 2024 mark of 620. So that's good news for you if you're buying in our market. It means you got more homes to choose from than you have in the past 6 years. So keep that in mind. Now, what does this do to supply, or how does this translate into supply? So we're talking about months of inventory when it comes to supply. So that means if no new homes were to hit the market starting November 1st, how many months would it take to sell all the homes on the market at October's sales numbers? So basically you take the inventory pie and you divide it by the number of sales, and that gives you this number. So last month in October, we were at 5.6 months of supply, which is down from September. We were at 6.02, and in August, we were at 6.64. Anything between this 4 to 6 month window here that I've shaded with a lighter color is considered to be a balanced market by real estate economists when looking at the whole picture. But I'm gonna disagree with them a little bit on that. Even though we've floated down to the 5.6 months mark, you know, let me get into this. Okay, so supply's down despite a surplus. So that's the point. We had a surplus in inventory, but supply was still down and our months of inventory is down, even though we have less buyers buying in today's market than we have sellers putting their homes on the market. those two things don't really align. So it goes back to the sellers giving up theme that I have for this video, and sellers are giving up. So they're reducing the amount of inventory, which is then reducing the amount of supply, which then gives us down to the 5.6 months of supply. So if we continue to see sellers pull off the market, as we typically do during the seasonal slowdown, but if we see that accelerated, months of supply is going to drop, and it is going to push us back down towards a balanced market, because essentially a balanced market is when there is closer to an equilibrium of buyers and sellers in the marketplace. So there's a house for every buyer, but not too many. And then also not the other way around like we saw in 2020 and 2021. Trends downward, typically year over year. Look at this, look at the blues here. 2024 is going to trend down. So we are going to have downward pressure already because of the seasonality. But I think it could go either way. If we don't have a bunch of sellers pulling their homes off the market because they're disgruntled, we could bounce back and be closer to the 6. I want to know what you think. Drop a comment below on this video. Let me know what you think. Is our months of supply going to go up? Is it going to go down? Do you think we're in a buyer's market, or are we truly in a balanced market as the numbers suggest? I want to hear your experiences in the market today and what you're feeling as a buyer or a seller watching this video. Median sales price. So last month, the median sales price was $598,000. And last year, that was 3.7% over the median sales price last year. That's good. This is seriously a great stat. I'm very happy to see this. It makes me happy as a real estate agent. Let me unpack that a little bit. Because the median sales price has been pretty consistent over the last 3 months. So August, we were at 595, September 607, October 598. So we've been flirting with that 600,000 mark right there. And I like that. I like consistency as a real estate agent. I like being able to bring news to you, the buyers and sellers that are interested in our market or currently in our market, and be able to give you some normalcy. Now, where this goes from here, that's the next question. So let's unpack that a little bit. We've been the most steady in the last 3 months since March, April, May of this year, which was also a good trend. But look at all the spaghetti going on here on this graph. Like, it has been since 2019, which was a pretty steady year, which is kind of what we want to get back to be honest with you. I'd love to see like an annual 3 to 4% increase year over year over year. That would just bring peace to my heart for some reason. Like I said, normalcy. I like normalcy. I like predictability, especially when it comes to the numbers. That way I can bring you as buyers and sellers somewhat of an idea of what's going on, rather than this crazy spaghetti graph we have had for the last, 4 years of up and downs. 2020 and 2021, we had the pandemic, and it was just an escalator going up, right? Until September of 21, saw a little bobble, but it did wind up going back up. So those years, upward trend pretty consistently. 22, 23, 24, we didn't really know what was going on 1 month to the next. I couldn't tell you if it was going to go up or if it was going to go down, because it was doing something. It just kind of varied. So you can see the patterns there. So again, back to just normalcy. I'm just driving the nail home on this one. Trends relatively flat for the year over year. So let's look at 24 and 20. Let's not look at 23. Let's look at 24. So last year, going from October to November, 576, 570. So it went down slightly, but it was still in the ballpark. So I think for 2025, making a prediction for November, I think we're going to still be right there around the 600,000 mark, plus or minus 10 grand. So 590 to 610. We'll see what happens next month, and I'll let you know the data. Discounts. So what are sellers giving for discounts right now? What are homes actually selling for versus what they've been advertised for on the market in the MLS? So as of last month, there was an average of 2.6% discount off of the list price. If you take that, times it by the median sales price that we just talked about, that gives you a cool discount of 15 grand. So 15,548 average discount off the median list price. So that tells me if you are buying a house around $600,000, you should be able to get it for around 15 grand off of that. Unless you're asking for concessions for your closing costs, for lender fees, for rate buy downs, that kind of stuff. Talk to me if you've got any questions about that. I can be happy to open your mind on that topic, but for the sake of this video, we're gonna not go there. So what are we looking at? September to October increase is a pretty common theme. So we did go from 97.2 to 97.4. Don't know why, but same thing with last year, 96.9 up to 97.4. So we're on board with last year's numbers. And last year it dropped back down to 97.1. So prediction for November, just based on 2024, is that I think we're gonna probably open the discount a little bit bigger, probably get closer to the 3% mark off of the list price. You know, and that is common with a seasonal shift. Last stat we're going to cover today, days on market. So we are at 92 days on the market right now for average for the homes that sold. And September was also at 92, well 91.7, but basically 92 days on market. So back to some normalcy, it's flattening out. You can see the trends here. We're looking at last year was an increase going into October, November, December. 23 though was a decrease from September to October. And then we had an increase moving forward from there. So what are we talking about? Trends is that we're going to increase through the winter months, and then we'll start to decrease February, March, April, back down to May being a low point. And prediction, well, I think we're going to break the trend here. I think we'll stay steady at 92, plus or minus 92, right? But I think we're going to relatively stay steady here and break the trend. Because I think more sellers are pulling their houses off market, like we've seen, right? I think more are going to continue to do that. And that means buyers aren't going to buy the houses that have been on market for a longer amount of time because those houses are going to disappear. So they'll be buying houses that have been on the market for less than 92 days. And those ones that close in November will be recorded on this and will give us our average days on market. So I think we're still going to be higher than it's been in the past 4 years, but I think we're going to be at or below 92 on that one. That is a wrap on our Prescott area market update for November 2025. Let's do a quick summary, a quick recap here. I'm going to read from my notes because I've already written this down. So supply data says that we are back in a balanced market, right? But I think we're still in a buyer's market due to the continued month-over-month surplus we've experienced this year. And that doesn't align with inventory reduction, meaning, like I said, sellers are pulling their homes off market because they're not getting the price that they want, and they're tired of the house being on market and getting shown a bunch of times. So disgruntled sellers pulling their homes off the market, and that combined with our seasonal shift, I think we're going to see inventory continue to reduce. But I don't think that means we're technically in a balanced market. We're going to have more inventory coming off market to get closer to what feels like a balanced market. So keep that in mind. Even though the data says balanced market, it's not feeling that way. It's feeling more like a buyer's market. So if we haven't met yet, my name is Brent Wofford. I am a licensed real estate agent with Keller Williams Arizona Realty. I do personally live here in Prescott with my family, and I am an Arizona native. If you have any questions at all about real estate in northern Arizona, I cover the Prescott area. So Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, Dewey Humboldt, over the Sedona Verde Valley as well. So Cottonwood, Camp Verde, Cornville, Sedona, on up the hill to Flagstaff, Williams, and back down and around. So if you have any questions about real estate in any of those markets, I would love to be your guy, and I am happy to help. Please like this video if you found it useful and you're still here, and subscribe to my channel to stay up to date on the ever-changing real estate market here in northern Arizona. And thanks again for watching, and stay rad.